Well, cool. Well, hey, welcome everybody. This is kind of our weekly webinar where we talk about various different things kind of in the hog world and etc and whatnot. So today is going to be kind of like a different format. Previous videos have been more so focused on features of the console. This is going to be kind of maybe a new type of format where we're going to talk about top 10 of various different topics. So the first one that we're going to start with is actually top 10 sort of tricks of the trade, especially for being a programmer. We're going to use a lot of hog examples for this webinar, but a lot of the things we're going to talk about can definitely be applied to other consoles or really just design or working in the industry in general. So I'm Noah. I'm a product support specialist at High End Systems, and then this is also Megan, my counterpart. Megan, if you want to say hi.
Hi, everyone. I do the same thing Noah does.
Pretty much. So we're just going to kind of go in. We're going to talk about some various different topics of kind of how to basically be a better, faster, more efficient programmer overall in the console. So, Megan, is there anything else you want to talk about before we actually kind of get started?
No, just make sure you drop your questions in Q&A to make sure we see them. I'll be kind of looking at the chat, but just make sure questions go into Q&A. And if you watch this later on the YouTube, just put your comments as a question. Just put your questions in the comments, and someone will make sure they're answered.
Cool. So we're going to jump in. And the first one is pretty easy, and that is shortcuts. Can't possibly be stressed enough. I mean, if you want to be a faster programmer, you need to know the shortcuts that are on the console. So I'm actually going to pull up where to find the shortcuts on the manual, so where you can print them out and keep them with you on the console. I actually recommend a lot of times people actually print out from the manual the page and then laminate it and then keep it attached to the console or throw it in the road case, because it's always nice to just know those shortcuts because you can't remember them all, and it's kind of nice to look at it every once in a while and be like, oh, I forgot that that was actually a shortcut. So I'm going to find that up in the manual really quickly. And then, Megan, if you want to talk about some of your favorites.
Yeah, I just posted the link also to the manual in the chat there. But so my favorites are max min. So maximum minimum, if you hold on the plus sign and spin the encoder wheel on any value or any encoder wheel while you're controlling a fixture, it'll take you to the maximum and the minimum value of that. And then positive, negative is always good, or going to the opposite direction. So you'll hold down the minus key and spin the encoder wheels. So that's really common for gobo wheels. Whenever you're rotating gobos, if you're going clockwise and you want to go counterclockwise, positive, and that's when the minus key in the encoder wheel really is useful. Defaulting values and knocking out values, those are also two that are very, very, very useful, especially when programming and, trying to get the get your cue in a recording state. So to default a value, you can hold down the dot key and hit the encoder wheel, or if you need to default like all of the parameters that live in the beam palette in the beam in the beam kind, you can hold down the dot key and actually hit that kind button itself, and that's going to take all of the parameters inside that kind to their default value. And then to knock out, instead of hitting the dot, you hold down the backspace button and spin the encoder or hit the kind key. And again, that's going to knock out those values itself. There's a whole, so Noah just pulled up all of these wonderful shortcuts here. Excuse me. What is out of here? There's lots in here that are great. One that I also use a lot is, is it pig and choose? So pig choose, I believe, is the one that opens the the queue list settings really quickly. Sorry, again, it's like I know these shortcuts with the back of my hand, but if I'm not in front of a console and I'm not seeing them to see the buttons that I actually hit, it's hard to see.
I know what keys to press. I sometimes forget what they're called though.
Yeah,
I know open is always the one right next to zero, but sometimes I'm like, what is next to open? I forget.
And I'm like,
I know it's there.
Here, I'm going to hit the button, like muscle memory, but it's like that doesn't help me because I don't know what button I'm hitting. But yeah, pig and choose, and that one I just started putting more into my workflow to directly get to those queue list options or those scene options. That way you can quickly toggle like what your release time is, or like what your or like your chase options. Just hold on pig, choose, you automatically get there instead of going just straight through the cue list, you can then set it to bounce, to go 1 through 10, 10 through 1, and back and forth, back and forth. But those are the ones that I really like that do not include navigation. But I think, Noah, you're going to go and talk more about navigation.
I am. I do want to touch on a couple though that I don't think are on this page. They're just kind of you kind of have to know them. But one of them is we have what's called open-ended selection, and one of the things that you can do is if let's say that you have 10 fixtures of one type, so we'll call them the solo spots, for example, because that's what's in the show file. On a lot of other consoles, if you have nine, well, I say nine fixtures because that's what's actually in the show here, you have to type in 1 through 9 and then enter or some sort of command. On our console, we can actually assume an endpoint. So if you say 1 through and then you just hit at or do any other kind of command, the console assumes that you just want to go until there's a break. So if there's not a fixture number 10, it'll just go to 9. So if you're working in groups of fixtures, you can use that to very quickly select them, and you don't have to remember the ending number. It's much easier to remember the first number, 1, 11, 101, something like that, than it is to remember the ending number, because you might have different numbers of fixture types. So that's one of my favorites. It does work both ways. So you could also do through 9, enter, or you could do 5 through, enter, and do 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then if there's no 10, it would stop at 10. Another one that you'll actually find
real
is
quick, Noah, just to add that in. I'm sorry. It also ends at the next fixture type break.
correct.
So if your spots are 1 through 9 and then your washes are 10 through 15, if you just hit 1 through enter, it's only going to grab the 1 through 9 because you have 2 different fixture types.
Correct.
I just wanted to put that in there so that people know.
Yeah, no, it is fixture type specific, unless it's a compound fixture, I believe.
Compound fixtures are still one fixture type, so it would be okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then the other one that's very common is if you ever need fine control for an encoder, pig, and that encoder wheel is your friend. So as I said, I always recommend that you guys go to this section of the manual, it's chapter 31, and I myself actually have this printed and actually pinned to my little cubicle wall. And so I look at it every once in a while and I would go, oh, I forgot that was a shortcut, and just kind of build it into your workflow. So if you want to be a faster programmer, it's probably the most obvious tip. Shortcuts are your friend, especially if you're also on Hog4 PC. There's QWERTY keyboard shortcuts as well. So if you don't have a console in front of you, these are a little harder for me to memorize, but getting these in, I have some of the big ones memorized, but knowing those if you're Hog4 PC is also very beneficial.
Yeah, definitely. Set is one that I have memorized for PC a lot. And then record is easy because it's R. But yeah, those are like the 2 that I have actually set for Hog4 PC, like in my memory bank.
Robert has a question.
Yeah, I was just about to ask and say, is there a way to release the last fixture instead of clear? So do you want to take this one, Noah?
So you can clear specific fixtures with what's called the knockout command. I'm assuming this is what you mean by this question. So clear will remove all information from your programmer for all fixtures, regardless of whether or not they're selected or not. The knockout key, which is a little soft key here at the bottom, that allows you to knock out within a specific selection of fixtures. So it's going to knock out the selected fixtures, but you can also apply a mask to it. So if you only want to knock out intensity, but you want to keep, say, position, color, beam, etc., you can say intensity knockout, and it'll knock out just the intensity values of your selected fixtures. So that's kind of how you would do it. As far as selecting the fixture, you can either just select it like you would normally, but there's also a shortcut for that, which is select previous. So on the bottom part of the console, there's the select, and then previous is another soft key. So that's if you don't remember what you just had selected, select previous is your friend. Cool. So that's kind of our first tip.
And I'm going to bounce off of that real quick, Noah. So I know you said you could hit intensity and then press the knockout button. I don't like doing that because I'm always scared I'm going to knock out like everything by doing that. Mm-hmm. So that's whenever I actually use that knockout shortcut that I have for just intensity, where I hold down the backspace button and hit the intensity button.
Right. So yeah, the key equivalent is backspace for
exactly.
knockout.
again, tying it back to shortcuts. Um, I just wanted to, I just like that way because then I know for sure, like I don't have to check the command line to make sure it says intensity before I hit knockout. I mean, I know I can always undo, but that is another case, in case, like, why I really like shortcuts because it does make me be specific and saves me sometimes from my issues.
Correct.
Cool. So,
Well,
Noah,
cool.
I think
So
you're going to talk about navigation now.
yeah, so the second tip of the day is navigation. So if you're spending a lot of time when you're on show site trying to find that thing or trying to get to that window or you're losing wherever your stuff is, it slows you down. So being able to navigate your console quickly and effectively, I guarantee you will make you a much faster programmer. So something that I see quite a bit is when people want to open a window, they tend to either do like the double click method and go into the window they're looking for, which is a very fast method, or they might use the shortcuts. So, like, say, if you hold down open and press position, it would open the position directory, and that's great. But one thing I highly recommend is actually storing views. So views, there's a couple of them that come by default in the show. I've actually already recorded over some of them here. What's nice about views is they always pop up exactly how you left them. So what's nice about a view is if I open up, say, this group view here, and I scroll down, if I click it again, it goes back to exactly that location. Also, if I were to change, say, these buttons to be small or do something different, I press that view button again, it comes back exactly how I left it. So views are handy because, once again, I build into my muscle memory what each view is and how to sort of process my show. So something that I kind of push for is the shortcut part of it. So actually, there's one of my favorite shortcuts that I was going to hold back on and talk about now, and that's the open and any number shortcut. So if you hold down open and you press a number on your number pad on the console, it opens up that corresponding view. So open 1 would open view 1, open 2 would open the second view, 3, 4, 5, so on and so forth. There's also ways to modify the windows themselves. So, for example, open backspace is one of my favorites. It closes the window. So you don't have to use your mouse, you don't have to use your touchscreen. If you're done with that window, don't spend that time having to press that little tiny X or press the close button. Open backspace is a really great way to just get rid of that window and be gone with it. Everything on that number pad actually is a shortcut. I'll run you through them really quickly. So open a number opens up the window. Open slash will copy. Open minus and open positive will cycle between different sections of the window. Through will cycle your focus. So if I had like another window and another window is hidden, open through will cycle your focus. Full will maximize and minimize. And at won't work in this situation, but if you have multiple monitors, you can very quickly move your screens around from different monitors. So that's just a really quick way to navigate. You don't have to, unlock your windows and rearrange them and things like that. You can use those to navigate throughout pretty quickly. But as I said, a good practice that I use is I build into my muscle memory, no matter what show I'm on, that view number 1 and view number 2 are my programmer views. So if I want to program something or I want to create something, they're usually view number 1 and view number 2. Usually one's the programmer and one's like some palettes. View 3 and view 4 is usually for recording. So where I put my cue list directory, my scene directory. 5 and 6 they kind of bounce around, but usually they're things for writing effects. So if I write an effect, I usually have a separate view for that. So that's usually 5 and 6. 7 and 8 is usually for pixel mapping if I'm pixel mapping. And then 9 is almost always my fixture window. So if I need to quickly get to my fixture window, open 9, I can make the adjustment that I need. And then if I need to go back to programming, I hold open, press 1, and I have everything exactly how I left it. I don't have to deal with all those extra windows that I've already had left open. Views will get rid of them. And then my absolute favorite is if you record a empty view or a close all view, you record that to view 10. If you have something open like that, you hold open, you press 0, and it closes all of your windows. So if you ever want to start fresh and you're really kind of getting lost in all of the windows that are on the console, open 0, record that as a view, and you can close all your windows and start fresh again.
And I'm going to
Go
tack
ahead.
on to that. is that that is on a per view toolbar basis. These shortcuts are. So if
Correct.
you were to increase, if you were on like a full bore or a Hog 418 where it has 10 views across the top, if you go to the next toolbar, and this goes for all the consoles, I just know they have actually 10 across the top. When you go to the next view toolbar, your shortcuts get renumbered. So you could say, great, 1 and 2 are programming on toolbar 1, but then when you're in playback or if you have a certain view per song for some reason, because like you need to do a lot of like effects like speed and all that kind of stuff like based on the song you're on. Well, then you could have each toolbar be a song, and those numbers would be remapped to whatever toolbar you have present. So those shortcuts are pretty nifty, and I usually just stick with with one toolbar though. That way I don't have to remember.
It's
But it
also
is
good
possible.
if you don't know what flavor of the console you're going to be getting that day. So if you have a Hedgehog, Roadhog, full bore, if you don't know what console you're going to get, you can actually do say the first 10 views for the Hedgehog screen resolution and that sort of screen arrangement, and then the second 11 through 20 views can be for the Roadhog. Then for the next set for the full bore, or you can do it to where if you're sharing the console with another operator, you're both, co-TDs or co-programmers, whatever, then you can be like, hey, the first 20 views are mine, the next 20 views are yours, and you can very quickly, without messing the other person's arrangement up, you can just split the views up that way.
Hmm. We do that actually at LDI quite often.
Yeah.
Just because we have one show file that goes on all the consoles, so we'll just build one show file for all the consoles, but the different view toolbar locks it in for the Roadhog or the full bore or the Hog 418.
Right,
That way
because
the windows look all nice and pretty.
yeah, like at last LDI, I was in charge of kind of getting all the fixtures working correctly, and then Joe was actually the main programmer and designer, so he had his arrangement and I had my arrangement, and we had different needs. So,
Yep.
all right, so you ready to move on to the next one?
Yeah, let's go to syntax and command. I'm not going to hit this one over the head because there is a whole webinar about this. Command the Hog did it a couple weeks ago with, I think it was Joe that we did it together with. And it just goes over the command structure. So it's really important on whatever console you're using to always know how your command structure and your syntax needs to be in order. So in Hog, that is source, mask, command, options, destination. So source being where you're getting the data from. Mask is kind of like able to filter that data, your command. So what do you want to do with the data? Options, if there's anything you need to change, like if you're inserting or merging something in, or if you're turning off tracking, or if you, oh, I had it in my mind right before I started. Anyway, if you're turning off tracking, or if you're recording a palette that is global versus per fixture versus per type, those are different options. And then your destination is where do you want to store that information that you had, that data that you had. So like, do you want to record it into a queue? Do you want to record it into a scene? Maybe you need to record that into position palette 12. Well, that is the destination that it's going to go. So again, it's source, mask, command, options, destination. If you can remember at least source, command, destination, you can probably get yourself around the Hog really, really easily. And if you don't have a source specified, so like if you needed to record Q10, record Q10, so with no source in there, that source is going to be the programmer, your command is going to be record, and your destination is going to be Q10. So just, again, always keep that in mind. I know lots of people will actually write it out on like white gaff tape
Board
and
tape
tape
or gaff
that,
tape, yep.
yep, to the bottom of their screen and keep it there right above their encoder wheels, because it does help your workflow to know these are the steps you need to take. And then like masking can say, great, I have all of the information inside my programmer for position, intensity, color, beam. Well, for Q10, I actually only need the color into it. So I could say color, record, Q10, enter, and now it's only going to record that color information as well. And then again, your options, if you were trying to record like a color palette, but you didn't want it to be global by default, you only wanted it to record set for the Solospot 2000s, you could actually hit the per type button. So it only works for the Spot 2000s. It's not going to apply to any other fixture type that you have inside your show file. Um, well, anything you want to add on, Noah, to that command structure?
This is definitely one of those that I say go into the manual.
Hmm.
There's a lot of information in there. I know everybody does learn differently. Some people learn by just doing it. Some people learn visually. But I will definitely say that in order to be a better programmer, you do kind of have to go into the manual. Myself, I will go in and read randomly sometimes, and I will find that there is just that one little tiny sentence that was in this little section, and it
Mm-hmm.
flips my world around because I was like, oh, I didn't know that was a thing, and it changes my philosophy of how I program.
Hmm.
Uh, so yeah, this is definitely one of those that, go into our user manual, kind of read the different syntax examples and see what you actually can do with the console. It's really quite powerful.
And like I said, there's like a whole hour long video over that we did with on a webinar.
Correct.
And then there's also in our tutorial series, there is like that Learn Hog 4 Season 2 that talks a lot about our command structure.
Yep.
If you're a big, like, you just want to watch videos, like, that is a good season to just go watch and learn how the command structure can be utilized to really speed you up and really speed up programming. Um, and then the next thing I want to talk about in this, because I said, no, your syntax. Dotted user number syntax, even just for like normal fixtures. Noah, does your show file have like the unos in with the dotted numbers yet?
I can do it really
Can we
quickly.
do it really quickly and
Can't
switch the
remember.
view?
Yeah, so I'll do it
Cool.
real quickly.
So again, this is one of the ones that I hit over the head for people is like know how to use dotted user number. Whether or not you're dealing with compound fixtures or not, dotted user numbers are really nifty. So like our unos here are having dotted user numbers 301 through 320. It's probably less than 321 now. But if Noah hits 301 through enter, it's going to select all of those unos at full to bring them on. Actually, Noah, can you hit clear? I'm going to be specific here and put highlight on with 301 through enter.
It was.
Oh, my bad. I'm sorry. I said it
It's
full.
okay.
So
Oh, I was in the fixture window. That's why I had highlight on.
cool. So with highlight turned on, what's nifty you can do with the dotted user number is if you just want one cell, hit dot one enter. That's going to grab the first cell. Dot five enter is going to grab the last cell. You can join them also, so you could do dot two plus dot four enter, and that's going to grab the 2 and 4. Now, if you wanted to grab the whole fixture again on all of them, you can just hit dot dot enter, and that's going to grab all of the parts of the fixture. Again, this is useful for normal fixtures. So in this case, we just have our unos. These aren't compound fixtures whatsoever. They're just a single source light that pan and tilts really fast. These are useful for compound fixtures also. So if you're dealing with like a quad or a hex that has multiple fixtures inside it, or like a solo pix 19 or 7 or 37 or whatever, however many numbers we decide to put in there, you can grab each cell individually at that point. And if you want the center cell on all the fixtures, you just hit dot one enter, and that grabs the center cell on all the fixtures. It's also useful on I do it on theater shows where it's fixture number, where it's like electric 1, 2, 3. Well, all the fixtures that start with a whole number of 1. That way, if I need to grab all of whatever's on electric 1, I can just hit 1 enter. And now I'm just selecting my fixture number 1, all the fixtures on electric 1. And then anything fixture-wise that repeats on the previous electrics, I can just give those the same dotted user numbers. And then I can select them all at the same time. So if I needed the high side source 4s on all the stage left sides, I could just hit 1 through 3, enter, dot 1, enter, and grab all my high sides at once. So it just helps. Knowing that dotted user number syntax can really help you speed up your programming a bit more.
And I actually used that last night. I'm actually doing a virtual show from home, and we're pre-programming for it. And they have a camera in the room so I can see it. And they have 4 sticks of truss that shoot up, and there's, I think, 5 LEDs per truss. And I didn't like how they originally picked the numbers. And so I went in and I made, 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.5, all the way. So I actually had basically 4 whole numbers, but if I wanted the middle LED par, I would just be select 1 through 4, point to enter, and I don't have to remember that that's actually number 2, 6, 11, and it's much, you don't want to spend the time doing the math. I don't
Mm-hmm.
have to look at any paperwork. I just kind of can use dotted user numbers to select fixtures faster. Uh, that
Mm-hmm.
really should be its own tip, but we didn't put it in this video. But how to select fixtures faster.
Yeah.
All right.
I've done it on box trusses also. Sorry, just putting off another example. Like on a box
Yeah.
truss, um, where you can do where it's like the same. We had literally 3 box trusses with all the same fixtures. So all of it was dot one, dot two, dot three, dot four, and I just repeated that numbering scheme across each box truss, and each box truss had its own full number. So I could easily grab the dot one, or the bottom left corner, or the top right corner, that kind of thing. Noah, do you want to? We talked about using dotted number syntax, but we have not explained how to apply dotted number syntax.
Yeah, so
Um,
Niels, I'll answer your question for you. So the way it works is just like you would number any other fixtures, you want to highlight the range that you want to change, and then you press set. Let me switch this over because you can't see that window that pops up left screen. There you go. So you want to press set, and that brings up that little box. And then what you want to do, so I'll change it back to what it was. So there's 301 enter, so they're all whole numbers. Is you hit set and you type in the first number you want it to be. So if you wanted it to be 301, it's going to start with a whole number 301, and then you decide how many parts you want to have. So if I say /5 enter, you'll see I actually kind of made a little bit of a mistake, and that is that 301 is a whole number, so that would actually select the first fixture, and then it goes 301, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if you did need what's called a master, essentially a whole number fixture, you could do that. But if in this case with these Unos where they're each individual fixtures, there's not like a master fixture, you actually want to type in the point one number first. So I'll say 301.1, so that's my actual first fixture, and I'll say slash to denote parts, and then five parts, enter. So now it will go 1.1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then once it hits that fifth number, it'll reset and go back to 302.1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on and so forth.
yeah.
That's another one of those. There's a lot of syntax that you can use for that, and that's another one that I'll say, hey, it's like very, very well written in the manual. But I think we also have. I mean, you had a whole video. Did you have a whole video on this one, Megan, recently?
I think I did a video on dotted user numbers, or I did a video utilizing dotted user numbers if I didn't
Yeah.
do a whole video on it. Oh, I did. Fixture selection, why it's important.
Yes.
Um, I have actually the YouTube link right here. Um, but here is, I put in the chat the YouTube link to fixture selection and why it's important, because we do talk. I do go into depth and actually show like more examples of how dotted user numbers are useful, including the how to do it like Noah just did, and then how to use it with like a compound fixture. Because with compound fixtures, the dotted numbers are just given to you completely, and we talk about using that master cell. And you can also, another time that I talk about it is in that media server one, because media servers are great compound fixtures usually because you have that global and then you have all the layers inside it. That is also a compound fixture. So that's another time that I talk about it. All right.
Cool. You want to move on to the next one?
Yeah, I'm opening up my outline again.
So
How
tip
to
number
troubleshoot.
4.
No. Yeah. Yeah, how to
Yeah.
troubleshoot.
Yeah, that's where we're at. I think we know how to,
Yeah, it's
right?
you. Go for it.
So number 4, know how to troubleshoot a problem. So if you're spending a lot of time troubleshooting, you're losing your time programming. So there's a couple of kind of philosophies for when it comes to troubleshooting any problem, specifically in Hog. We'll cover a couple of them. But the analogy that I like to give a lot of times is that you want to simplify the system, right? So if you're dealing with like a network situation where you're going from a console and then you have a second console and you're going into like a network switch, and then that network switch is going into some sort of a network, and then out that network you're going into, maybe there's a router involved, or maybe there's some streaming ACN or ArtNet nodes, and then finally you get to your fixtures, right? And so there's a lot of pieces to that sort of map. And if you're working on your console and you can't quite figure out why something isn't working, you need to simplify, right? There's a lot of networking in that example that is involved there. So how about you remove networking from the situation first, right? So if you are troubleshooting a problem, you want to go straight 5-pin DMX into the fixtures, right? That tells you that the fixtures are working, and that tells you that the console's working. And then you use that information of taking stuff in and out of the equation to find out if that's actually the case. Add a couple other things on here. Yeah, basically figure out where the location of the issue is, and then figure out if it's a fixture problem or if it's a console problem. And this is going to actually fall into the next tip that we have, but that is know your resources for troubleshooting. So an example of a resource is the manufacturer. So if you're having an issue with a console, specifically say the Hog console, you can actually call or email us, and usually we'll respond. Most of the time we will. No, we do it during normal business hours. We respond pretty quickly. If it's after hours, we actually do have an emergency line that you can call. Don't be afraid to call that emergency line. I have people that have called and they're like, I've been dealing with this for 3 hours and I can't figure out what the problem is. And it's actually a really simple thing. They probably just didn't have this one box checked. So know your resources. Do try to make an attempt to figure it out on your own before calling. But if you really don't know, or you're on a time crunch, which is a very common situation, don't be afraid to reach out and ask, because one of us or someone up from the manufacturer might know. I know there's several fixtures out there that they're coming out with all this new cool technology of how you control it. And if you've never used that type of functionality before, it might be a bit of a head scratcher. So don't be afraid to go into the user manual, look at the DMX chart, or as I said, call or email the manufacturer, because they want you to use their products. And so they want to make sure that you're using them to the best of your ability and the best knowledge, essentially. So that's know how to troubleshoot a problem. Megan, do you have anything else that you want to add on to that?
In troubleshooting, just like Noah said, process of elimination, like make things as simple as possible and then go to it and then start from there. So like if your giant network is not working, like Noah said, don't jump to the giant network first. Like see if you can control stuff via DMX from the console. If you can't control things via DMX from the console, well then there's your issue probably. It's probably going to be a console issue because it's working with the most simplest thing you can do. And so start simple and then expand to get to where you need to be, and then you start figuring out where your kinks are in the system.
And sometimes you have to take a break. I can't even explain the amount of times that I've been figuring out a problem or working on some sort of a solution, and I go, I need a coffee break, or I need a break, right? I step away for 15 minutes or an hour, whatever. I come back, and this actually happened last night with a networking issue, and boom, figure out what the issue is. So sometimes completely stepping away from the problem, clearing your mind, and not thinking about it, you come back fresh and you go, I didn't think about that. And then boom, maybe that was the issue. So it's also, if you're going on break, that's a great time to send an email, because then you'll get a response within that time usually. Cool. You want to go on to the next one?
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about, I know we talked about know your resource. I know you talked about know your resources a bit, but I just want to dive into again. Call or email, as Noah said. We have gotten several calls of, I've been working on this issue for 5 to 10 hours already. Please help. And usually everyone's very frantic at that point and is very stressed. If after an hour you probably haven't figured it out, give us a call. Whether that's us as a manufacturer for your fixtures or for your console, it doesn't matter. Like, call. Usually the consoles and the fixtures have someone for 24-hour support. I mean, I know we do at high end have it, ETC has it, where as long as it's an emergency for you and it's outside business hours, call. We are more than happy to get that taken care of. Because we don't want you to be stressed, and to be honest, I don't want to be stressed. So, like, if we're all in a good situation where we can all talk and discuss the different options, like, that is even better. And it also helps your troubleshooting process, because you're not overlooking something that could be the fix just because you're in a high stress situation at that point. And usually, I'll be honest, I have not met a support person that does not want the user to end up at 100% working. Um, our job is to help you, so let us help you. Um, and now when you're not in a so critical situation, there's YouTube videos you can go and look at. There's the manual you can go and look at to see if your answer's there. High End recently launched their support articles, so support.etcconnect.com/HES.
Hey,
And
look,
hey, look, it's all of us.
that was convenient.
Yeah. Noah, can you open this in a private browser?
Yeah. Control Shift in.
So the only reason I'm asking for that is because there is stuff in there that is only HES, like
Oh,
internal stuff.
yes, you're correct.
Yeah. But if you look in there, there are 4 categories: Hog 4, Hog 3, 2, and then like the light wave research stuff. Like we have information that we want you to get there. There's nothing under light wave research, which is why when you don't sign in, there's nothing there. But once the stuff pops up or like we get questions over it, we'll fill it in. Like if you just go into hardware, there it is. And one of the most popular things that we get asked is my Hog 4 console is stuck on the high-end logo. What do I do? Well, look, it tells you and it walks you through exactly what to do here. So we have these things where if you just Google your problem, they will come up. And then last thing is call a friend. If you are stuck on an issue and you know that your friend has used the gear before, maybe they've used the Solapix and for some reason you can't get the macros to work or the Flex Effects engine to work on your console. Well, give your friend a call and they can probably walk you through. So you always know that you know someone that can help you if needed. But again, also you can, like I said, call the manufacturer. We might not, as Noah said, like manufacturers are releasing fixtures and with new bells and whistles. We might not know how to control that fixture type specifically that you're talking about, like as a console product support person, but we can probably figure it out based on how other fixtures work. Yeah. Anyway, Noah, do you have anything else to add about know your resources?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, once again, I'll peg it. The manual. The manual is so awesome. But one of the great things about the manual is there's a glossary and index. And if you are in a web browser, I highly recommend that you save this. There's also a PDF version of the manual that you can find on our webpage. But if you're ever trying to find a problem, so let's say you're trying to shred up, ArtNet, so you can hit Control F, ART, NET. Oh, well.
We hyphen it.
We hyphen it in the manual, don't we? Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And you can use that Control F function to basically find exactly where you need to go in the manual. So if you're looking for something up, that's kind of, I found the fastest way to find the information. Once again, we're always a resource. There is this wonderful, wonderful knowledge base that we've actually created that, sometimes someone will email me with a problem and I have the exact article with everything already available. There's a study hall, which is where this video will be posted. These are usually much longer webinar style videos that ETC and High End are producing. Do note that there is a separate YouTube channel from our actual High End Systems YouTube channel. But if you ever need to find a video, these videos are usually shorter, a little bit more concise, not live. They're pre-recorded. So that's another great resource for you. There's also a Whole Hog Users Facebook group. So if you're on Facebook, you're more than welcome to check out that group. Usually if you need like a quick thing, those guys, if they've ever encountered it, they'll pretty much respond pretty quickly. So know your resources.
Yeah. But again, if you're in a show situation, like I always see the things on Facebook because I'm in that group. I see the things on Facebook that are like, hey, like my console just crashed and I'm in a show, like what do I do? And no one responds and that was posted like 2 hours ago. If you're in a show situation, call us. Call us.
I feel like we're televangelists right now. Do you feel that? I feel like we've hit that point
I'm like,
hard enough.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, like, if you're in a show situation, don't stress. Call us. We'll help you. We'll get you situated. It's what we do.
All right.
All right. With that being said, Noah, what's the next one?
Number 6, practice makes perfect. So The best time to really learn a console is when you don't have a time constraint, right? When you have the ability to sit at home, which if you can't take a console home, Hog4PC is free to download, free to use, free to update, all that other stuff. And you can pre-program at home as well. So practice makes perfect. I mean, simply put, explore the console, practice different functionalities of the console. And one of the things that I say a lot of times is go talk to other programmers. So if you're at a concert and you see there's a hog. Now, I don't always recommend this, but I personally do it. If I'm ever at a show or a bar or a club or anything like that, I will actually casually go up to the operator and introduce myself and just say hi. I don't bug them for more than 30 seconds, but I've actually made a lot of friends that way just by saying, "Hey, I see you're a hog dude." And a lot of times I'll say, "Hey, can I see your show file? Can I see how you've put things together?" So socialize with other people and see how they put something together, and you might find some inspiration, or they might have a shortcut or some sort of route for creating something that you haven't used before. So that's another big one for as far as practicing. Um, yeah, so don't be afraid to try new things. Don't be afraid to try a new button and say, I wonder what this does. So that's kind of my big things for practice makes perfect. There's free visualizers out there. I forgot to also mention that. So actually, the visualizer that we're using today is available online. You can actually, I think it should be available on the study hall website. If you
And should be
can't
in the YouTube description.
Yeah, if you can't find it for whatever reason, shoot me an email, noah.allen@highend.com or support@highend.com, and we should be able to send this file to you. It's a great file for learning the console, and you don't need any hardware. So if you're at home and you're learning the console, download Hog4PC, download this as a presentation file of Capture, and you should be able to learn about different functionalities and different functions of the console on your own without the fear of a time limit, essentially.
Yeah.
So, Megan, anything else that you want to add on that one?
Just to add into refine, try slash new things, like you said, try new things. When we release a new feature, like maybe see if once you have time to look at the new feature, see if it works in your workflow. Like the dotted user number thing. Like lots of people had their workflow set where it was 101 was the master, then or 100 was like the master, then you had 101 through 110 being the cells. Well, you could also, I mean, once dotted user numbers got introduced, a lot of people didn't pick up the dotted user numbers at first. Well, it is, in my opinion, a lot faster to start using those dotted fixture numbers to select things because then you don't have to do 100 plus 200 plus 300 plus 400 to grab all four of the masters. So just like when new things come out and you have time to sit down and try them, just sit down, try them, see if it works for you. And I mean, if it doesn't, it doesn't. But it usually, if we're introducing stuff like that, it's to help everyone here. Um, it's to help all the users speed up their workflow, stuff like that. So just again, try it when it comes out, or try it when you get a chance to try it. And if you like, you're like, I just need more info. Like, go look for it. We again know your resources. There is going to be more info about new things that are coming out. I promise.
And actually, there's a really great resource for that. So on that knowledge base website that we were just talking about, one of the pages is all Hog4 OS software versions. And what's really cool about this is that if you don't know what's come out recently, you can actually go to this web page, and I believe this is the release notes. And you can actually
Yep.
see the release notes and see that, for example, in 3.13.0, we added new plot objects. And so if you don't know what's new and you don't know kind of what we've been working on, or if you're working in old software, you can see those things, which is really quite a nice thing. So if you haven't updated for
Mm-hmm.
several versions, I just middle click a couple of these articles, see what's kind of new in the hog world, and it's a great way to learn as well. So release notes are, once again, another great resource for you to use.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
what else is
And
on here? Go ahead.
so no, I think that's it for practice makes perfect. We're going to talk a little bit about the understanding your feedback after that, though. So the console does give you feedback. This one's very hog specific. just because there is different symbols that you can see. There's different color codes, console feedback, all that kind of stuff. Um, so I can we pull up at least the front? Yeah. Oh, you're one step ahead of me, Noah. Um,
It's like we are just in tune. We know what we're
I
talking
know.
about.
Um, so the first thing I wanted to talk about is the at the bottom of your display near where your command line is. I'm like hovering over it with my mouse, like you can see my screen. Um,
Sorry.
no, no, you're good. Where your command line is, there's a little like refresh looking icon. That's actually a very important icon that we recently added. And that's going to tell you whether or not there's a task going on and if it was successful or if it failed for some reason. So like if Noah was to click on that icon there, you will see that a window comes up with task statuses and it lists all the things that were previously done on your console. So you can see what tasks are previously done, and if something failed, it turns red and it tells you why it failed. I think it should tell you why it failed. It might just say failed now that I say it out loud.
Yeah, there's like a couple of, let's see, time, record, 50, no, that's also syntax.
Yeah.
I have to think of something that doesn't work.
Try 1 through 9 move. Enter. That one shouldn't have worked. I don't know. The command line was red. But anyway,
It's up to your fixtures. Go
yeah.
ahead.
But with so that's just one way you can get your task. Of course, now that we're trying to figure out like failing tasks, we can't. But I'm sure y'all will, and I'm sure the next time that we are on the console, we will ourselves. Because I hit it every now and then as well. But yeah, so that's just an important thing to keep track of. Then you also have the green check mark next to the time. That's like your network status. So green check mark, your network's good. Like if you're connected to multiple consoles, or even if you're on one console, that's technically a network because of the different console and DP8000 process. So trying to connect those together, if your DP8K goes down, or if you get disconnected from the network somehow, you'll get a yellow triangle with an exclamation mark there, and that will. It's just good to keep an eye on whether or not something, like if something stops responding, you can go and say, oh, my DP crashed, or oh, my server crashed for some reason. Usually you get notifications that pop up, but just in case you don't, you'll see here that there is an issue for some reason whatsoever there. Now on your playback bar, you can also have some symbols there as well. If you turn a list into HTTP, so if you hold down choose, hit the HTTP button, you'll see that you get a yellow H. That just means HTTP is turned on, highest takes precedence. If you see a little mask down in the bottom in that playback bar, you'll know that there's a playback masking turned on, so you'll only see certain parameters come from there. So like if you only want position information to come out, you can mask only position to come out of that queue list, and so you only see position information coming out of there. Another important thing in that is that there is a red triangle that can appear, and if that red triangle appears on the playback bar, it just means that queue list has higher priority. So if something is and you're trying to overtake that queue list and it's just not going away, well, it probably has higher priority than the other queue list in your console or in your show file. Knowing the status of your command line. If your command line is blue, your command syntax was taken correctly. So like if Noah hits 1 through 9 at full, it turns blue. Yay, our syntax was right. Now if he hits 1 through 9 move, the syntax is going to turn red because that's not valid syntax. So red in the command line means your syntax is not valid at that point in time. Blue in the command line means your syntax is good. Cool. And then of course there's flashing buttons and stuff on your playback bar. So like if you have a queue list going and you bring down that fader with it still going, that pause button is going to start flashing. Noah has these all set up to release when the fader goes down. So I don't think you'll ever get the flashing there.
Yeah, you get the release over 2 seconds, actually, I think.
Yeah.
So you'll see like a flashing pause button for release. Mm-hmm. And then I think it flashes on the play button when you're going up. Yeah. I have a couple of custom settings on this queue list that we use for trading, so it's actually kind of not the actual normal situation.
Right. But But yeah, that's what I have for feedback. Like that's the most common feedback on the console, and to keep aware of your command line, if it's red or blue after a syntax, or after executing, and then your exclamation mark or your check mark for your network status, and your task settings. And I think Noah's going to go over the importance of the output window now.
I am because so the output window has a little bit of feedback that a lot of people don't know off the top of their head. So currently everything is off. Let me go to my solo spots. Where are they at? Solo spots right here. So if I push this fader up, they'll start outputting. And now if they start releasing, oops, why am I not getting colors? Let me do pig release and see what happens. There you go. So since
Highlights turned on. Your highlight's going to override, I think.
Yeah. So if values are staying still, they'll just be a solid black. But if I say release, so whole pig release, purple is like our universal color for release in the desk. If I press play, actually it's 2 seconds. Let me find a cue list that is more than a second. I'll just record something. 9 at full time 5 enter, clear 10, clear, big release. So if I press play, green means that something is cross-fading, essentially. I actually didn't have to go to full. So green means that a list is cross-fading. If you have your lights in an effect, so do 1 through 9 at full, do effect 1, enter, close that window, and then merge that into list 8, Q1, enter, clear. So you should get like a teal output on the pan and tilt, but not the intensity because there's not an effect on the intensity. So that's another one. So if you ever see teal, it means effect. If your numbers aren't moving, but they're still teal, you might have like a size of 0 or a rate of 0 on your effect. And then there's also orange, which is for parks. I'll do 1 through 9, enter, 1 through 9, enter. Oops, I don't know how to type today. 1 through enter. Hey, look, I'll use that shortcut. And then if I say park, should go, 1 through 9, enter, how about touch? Touch, always create that stuff, park. There you go. So now we've got like an orange background. So that is the universal feedback for this value is parked. So if you're wondering why your lights aren't doing something, they might actually be parked. And that's a good way for you to kind of know the feedback. So another color coding of the feedback. And then 3 more little buttons I want y'all to kind of remember about is watch for your LED feedback on highlight, which is the little button just below your 4th encoder, blind, and then of course clear. So very quickly, if clear is lit up, it means you have information in your programmer. Information in your programmer always overrides playback. That's a good one to know. Blind, if you want to blind your programmer, your blind key will come on. If you open any kind of editor, that key comes on. So do keep an eye on that key. And then also highlight. Remember if highlight's on, because if you're recording and you're not actually recording the correct intensities, because highlight is overriding intensities. So just kind of keep in mind your feedback on those buttons.
And when you say programmer, Noah, Noah also means like any active editor. So blind, clear, that is also like if you open a queue or if you open a scene or you open a palette to edit it. It's really any active editor is what blind and clear represent.
Right. So if I open up this palette, I'll open up this 45-degree offset palette. You'll note that my blind key actually comes on. So do kind of keep an eye on it if you open up a palette by accident. It's also a good indicator because if I were to open up, say, position, you'll see my blind key is still on. And now my active editor is actually the palette, even though I can't see it on screen. And this actually falls back to, once again, remembering open 0, close all your windows. Just a good practice to have.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Moving on.
Cool. Yeah. Organization and consistency. Also super important when making your show file.
Yeah. Do you want to add anything before I kind of give my spiel on this one? I feel like I just talked for a bit.
Sure. I can label everything, color code everything. It's going to be helpful, especially if for some reason you get hit by a bus and you can't run the show file. On top of that, though, it also helps, like, oh, you were recording something at like 3 a.m., come in the next day, and you can see exactly what you were doing because you labeled it correctly. Not experienced that myself whatsoever.
And I feel like that one is really quite obvious, but I tell people all the time, just putting one letter is better than leaving it as whatever the palette, So if you have, say, color palette 13, and it's not color coded, if it's blue, even just simply putting the letter B is 10 times better than just letting it say color palette 13. So I am always a big proponent of labeling. And the other thing is labeling consistently. So coming up with a scheme that makes a lot of sense. I'm going to show you guys a little trick that I've kind of been doing recently. Let me open up my group directory, and good, I actually haven't done it on the show file. Give you guys this full hog for PC. But not a lot of people know this, that you can actually add comments to a lot of directory items. So all of these red lights right here, the red box at least, are solo spots. So what I tend to do is I'll go in and I'll set a comment. So I'll say comment, and I'm going to say solo spot. I know it says it in the name, but I could get rid of it in the name there. And actually at the bottom of all these palettes, I actually have a second sort of labeling. So this is good if you want to have one type of labeling on the top part of your palette and a different type on the bottom. It's not uncommon for me to actually put the channel numbers. So like if I knew that the first section of Unos, which is this little group right here, is fixture number 301 to 305, or in this case 301.1 to 301.5, I'll a lot of times put the channel numbers underneath so that if I ever need to know those numbers, they're already there. So that's a really handy way as far as labeling. Another thing is if you need a copy between two windows, so like if you have your groups and you need to copy a bunch of names, you can actually copy that and then paste it into, like, say, a scene directory or anything like that. The same thing works with colors, unless the color is set to auto. That's the only exception. So if it's manually assigned color, it will work. If it's set to auto, it will not work. So once again, label consistency and at least put something. That's kind of a big proponent, because you never know if you're going around from venue to venue. And I've done this before where I've gone to a venue and I haven't been there in like 2 or 3 years, but I'm still using the same show file. I'll pull up my show file and I'll go, what was that thing again? What does this do? So labeling consistency is your friend. Another sort of trick, tip, and this will actually fall into our 10th tip, is that you can label things ahead of time. So if you know that you're going into a show, you know that you're going to need a red color palette, go ahead and just make the palette. It doesn't have to have any information in it, but at least it's already in your show. It's already put somewhere on your sort of grid of palettes or your scenes or whatever you're using. It's already labeled and color coded. And it's much easier to just merge data in that on show site than it is to spend that time building all that information from scratch. So like I actually use these, let me open up this view. I use these in almost any show that I go to. They're just some generic palette names, and if they make sense for the rig that I'm working on, I'll add them in, and if they don't, I just delete them. So I don't have to spend that time arranging my layout. Cool. Anything else you want to add on that, Megan?
No, I think I'm good for organization and consistency stuff. I mean, I'm a big proponent of color coding. I think just as you are, anything in red applies to the spot 2Ks, anything in blue applies to the washes, and et cetera, et cetera. Like I try to keep anything, if it's a fixture type, it applies to, it's the same color as it is in the group directory. I also, and this comes out, I guess, like a little bit on the organization part, I like to keep everything also like aligned in muscle memory sake. So I always keep my my buttons 10 across, kind of like you see here in this position directory that Noah has open. How there's this big empty gap. Well, because muscle memory knows that it's in this area, 1 through 10 is always this row. So you could actually go into the little position directory options or any directory options, and there's a button across section that you can set and have a certain set amount of buttons actually go across the directory there. So whether that's auto, which means it's going to fill the whole thing, or if it's only 10, that it's always the same no matter what monitor it's on, or however wide the window is open, you always get 10 across. So that's just something to keep in mind that you can do as well. That way, again, your organization is the same and you're consistent with all your group, with your palette windows, however they open, or directories, I should say, however they open.
Yep. So Braden asks, is there anything specific you assigned your kind keypad for anything to be faster? So the kind keys that he's referring to, they actually have two different modes. So this is 12 keys here on the right. They could be whatever you want them to be. I usually have, when I'm programming and preparing a show, I usually have some presets. I very frequently actually write a macro for select all, select previous, select odd, select even, and select invert, and I put that as a macro, and I just press the key because there's not a hard key for those
Hmm.
options. Sometimes I put record remove as a macro, and a lot really and truly what I actually use them for is fixture selection. So I'll say all solo spots or all this fixture group or all that fixture group. That's what I put them on for. But when I'm actually programming a show, they're bumps usually for me personally. So they're different scenes or different cue lists, and you can have multiple pages of those. One thing that I will say that is a trick that not a lot of people know about is that there's the way that command section is set up is there's only a forward key. There's not like a back key. So if you ever want to go forward, you can press pig and then the forward key to switch your page. That would go back a page. I make that a macro and I put that on the bottom left key of every single page. So that if I ever want to go back a page, I don't have to hold pig and press it. I can rock it back and forth between different pages.
I do the
Uh,
same.
yeah, and I do that on almost any show file that I'm using those command keys on.
Hmm.
So really, it's just whatever you feel that you need them to be. It's whatever you're using the most, and you can have multiple pages.
And I'll say in there, I usually use them as command keys and not kind keys themselves. So there's two different modes they are in, either command or kind mode. In kind mode, there you can make them be custom user kinds. So either hit the auto kinds button and they're all fill up, or you can make them to be where you know how you hit beam 8 million times and you keep getting different options. Well, you can make your own custom kind so that when you hit beam or you hit that one kind, you can instantly get to gobo rotate, then zoom focus iris, for example, if you have 5 encoders there. I mean, it's pretty
Yeah.
useful in that if you wanted to, but I don't usually use them unless I know for sure that they're there. Most of the time, I'll also use them for fixture selection, and then for if there's something there that's in the show file that I don't need to waste a fader on, so like Noah said, bumps, flash keys, stuff like that, that all gets dumped to the command keys themselves. Um, but yeah, I mean, oh, and then also another time to use command keys is not really to make me faster, but to keep my show file more safe. If I'm handing off my console to someone else or I'm fixing it to be like a fixed install type, I will put scenes and cue lists there for them to for people to fire. So like if I'm handing it off to a video DJ guy who just wants to be able to make the lights go woo around the scene because, well, I mean, why not? It's clubs and installs like that. Well, instead of giving them the scene directory where they can accidentally delete the actual scene, we can just show them the commands directory and they can just fire the scenes from the commands directory themselves. Again, that doesn't really make anyone faster. It just makes the show file a little bit safer. So the original source information is not deleted. Only the reference on the command key is deleted. Um, but yeah, I mean, the command keys are fun. They're super fast if you can put your macros there. If I'm doing a lot of pixel mapping in the show, I'll put my pixel map palette there. So like if I
Yep.
have, I'm one of the people that don't write a macro for my pixel mapping. I write a palette instead.
Same.
Um, so where I'll select my fixtures, I'll apply the pixel map, and then I record that into like a color palette or whatever that includes all the parameters that's needed to map the pixel map to the fixtures. So I'll put the group on like the top row of pixel mappable, and then the next row will be the different layers. I mean, will be the different palettes to actually apply. Again, it's 2 button pushes at that point and not just one, which is what people use the macro for. So you just have one button push for the pixel map. But if the top row is grouped, so like the top row would be like my RGB bars, and the button right underneath it is the plot that it belongs to, great. And then it's just boom, boom, and then go tap and do whatever I need to do with it. But that's also another case, really useful case in my book for the command keys is pixel mapping stuff.
I totally agree with you on that. If
Mhm.
someone didn't understand that, feel free to email us and like we can have like a private call or something like that
Yeah.
and kind of explain that trick. If you're pixel mapping, you're like, oh, there's so many steps to pixel map. I mean, we can pixel map in two clicks. I mean, you can make a
Yeah.
macro, make it faster, but 2 clicks you can actually do it
Hmm.
once
And
everything's set up.
there's also another webinar. By the end of these webinars, there's going to be a webinar for literally every function on the console. But there is also
Yeah,
another webinar for plots and pixel mapping, and I go over specifically making the map macro and making the pixel and making the palette and why I prefer the palette over the macro.
cool.
Cool.
So number 9, dun dun dun. Know your fixtures and your console capabilities. So what this really and truly means is understand what the console can do and understand what the fixtures can do. And I know Megan, this is actually more a little bit of your topic,
No,
but I'm
it's
kind
fine.
of
Go for
bridging
it.
it. But what I mean by this from a technical perspective is there's a couple of things really, but one of them is be prepared and know the modes that you're going to be using for your fixtures. So if you're not like there on site for the install or anything like that, and you as a programmer, you need to know exactly what mode the fixture you're going to be using is in, especially if there's not the ability to change the mode. So be very, very conscious of the mode. And one of those things is making sure that that mode is available on the console. So that's kind of a big thing is know what the fixture itself is actually capable for. Another thing is if you can get your hands on a fixture before you ever walk in show site, that is fantastic. I always, whenever I know the fixture types that I'm going to be using for the day or for the show or whatever, I will always print off at least 2 or 3 copies of the DMX chart. And sometimes, depending on how long the manual is, I usually print off the manual. That way, if I'm in a low internet area or something like that, I can look up that information on at least on a piece of paper. So know the capabilities of the fixtures, but also know what the console itself can do. So if you want a pixel map, know that this console can pixel map, and it does it quite well, in my opinion. So if you know that you want to do it, know before you walk on show site, preferably, but understand the limitations of the consoles and understand the limitations of the fixture types that you're using. Um, Megan, is there anything else you want to add on to that? I
Um,
kind of took that
yeah.
one from you.
No, no, you're good completely. Just a little bit more of know like the limitations of the console and know what the fixture is capable of. Literally knowing what the fixture can and cannot do is actually the best thing you can do so that if you know it's possible, like you get on site, you thought the fixtures could do 360, turns out they don't do infinite pan and tilt. Well, that's not a console fault, that's the fixture is wrong. Or either the fixture is wrong or it's just not capable of doing what you thought it could do. Nothing support wise can help you there. But also, I had an idea that I really wanted to say and I completely forgot it again. Um, anyway, just knowing exactly what the knowing how the console works with that fixture itself. If you can't
Mhm.
go into a shop to test out the fixture, put it in the visualizer and see if it's possible. Visualizers are going to be is not anywhere near the same as having a real as having a real fixture in front of you, but usually they're decent enough to at least get you part of the way there.
And
It'll
also,
help get your thought process a little bit more clear as soon as you get on site, rather than you going in completely blind.
I know like when we previs for LDI, we will have a visualizer on a
Mm-hmm.
TV screen and we'll usually have at least one of every fixture. So that way we can verify, we'll just pick somewhere in the rig to patch that fixture to. And that way we can actually verify that the fixture, what it's doing in the visualizer is the same as what it would be doing in the
Mm-hmm.
real world. So that's kind of a big thing. Get your hands on the fixture. I'll say like with the ETC lusters, me and
Yeah.
Megan both are going to tell you that the mode you should be using, if you're using a hog, is red, green, blue mode. That's
Mm-hmm.
just because of how hog handles color. It handles color in a 3-point system, at least as of today, which is 3.13.1 release. So I highly recommend that you use those fixtures in red, green, blue mode and let the fixtures, which actually have more than red, green, blue emitters, they have either 5 or 7 emitters, let the fixture itself do the calculation. I tend to tell people not to use modes that use like a local hue or a local saturation, because then you can't use the color mixing system of Hog. So little things like that. Know what you're working with as far as fixture wise. And
exactly.
don't be afraid to look at a DMX chart either.
Yep. And that ties into like what I was going to say about like knowing how the fixture works with your console. Just because like like Noah said, the color picker does not do local hue and local sat to the fixture. It only does CMY basically, or hue and saturation on the console. So because the color picker doesn't take into account any extra emitters, won't control the fixture's local hue and local saturation. There is not a reason if your fixture allows you to have it in RGB mode for it to. There's not a reason if you're using Hog to use a fixture's mode that is HSI. Like, I mean, that's just how the console works. The console will be much better, and you'll be much less frustrated if you do RGB mode on the fixture.
One more thing I'm going to add to this section, and that is, oops, I got to do my left-hand screen because this is a second window. Know your fixtures, and once again, make sure there's a profile for them in the library before you walk on show sites. What's nice about this is you can check yourself. So I went ahead and just typed in SoloPix, which is actually one of the fixtures we produce here at High End Systems. And thankfully, we have a whole bunch of different modes for the 7, 19, and 37 here in this library. And so you can double check if the tech or whoever you're working with, the master electrician, says, oh yeah, they're in 20 channel mode. You can confirm that information essentially with this DMX footprint. But if you ever want to make sure that you're using the right thing, what I would recommend doing is going into Fixture Builder, and if you copy one of the fixture types, you can actually see the channel mapping. So I don't know, what do I want to do? I'll do a solo spot. So if you want to make sure that you're using the right fixture, go into, we have a lot of solo fixtures, don't we?
We're so close to this 1,000.
Yeah, and maybe you don't know which one is which. You can go in and take a look at the DMX footprint and verify that it matches what you have found on the manufacturer's description on the website. So I'll go ahead and copy a spot 1000.
And that DMX footprint's also available in the fixture schedule. It's not just in the fixture builder. So whenever you go to add fixtures, you can just see it there also.
So yeah, so if you ever just want to see what a specific channel might be, you can go into, yeah, you can go into here into Fixture Builder, which is my preference, and see what this is. I wouldn't change any of these things unless you know what you're doing. That's my preference. So at least you can tell that channel 1 is pan, channel 2 is a 16-bit control on pan, 3 is tilt, etc., etc. So, so yeah, you want to move on to our last and tip of the day?
Tie us correctly into be prepared. So Noah just talked about the first tip, which is, does the console have the fixture library? Make sure it has the fixture library, or else you're going to need internet if we have it built. And I would suggest checking 2 weeks, if you have the time, 2 weeks beforehand, see if the console has the fixture library. Because then, if you have 2 weeks to wait for the fixture library, we can build you the fixture profile, or the fixture library. And it can be officially in Hog, and the next time we do a software update, it'll be released with the console software. So just make sure, again, that the console has the actual fixture library that you need to use. If it doesn't have the fixture library, you can request for the library to be made on our website, request.highend.com, and it'll go there. I always suggest let us build it for you. Even if you don't have those 2 weeks, still submit the request. Sometimes we can get it done within the day. Sometimes it might take a little bit longer. But you can always submit the request, and in the comments put that you need an urgent rush on it. And if our library guys can't get it done, Noah and I still have access to be able to see it, and we can possibly get it pushed out if we need it, if you need to.
Yeah, I don't recommend that all the time. I have a couple people that are like, "Oh, I have an urgent fixture." It's like, okay, you can't make that a habit.
Yeah, no, don't. Like I said, that's on a last minute possible thing. Like, don't do it all the time. Always again. This whole tip is be prepared. You want to be prepared before you walk in. You want to be prepared and have time and make sure that the library actually works. Because there are those times, I have them too, Noah, where people are like, "Hey, I need this fixture library in the next 20 minutes. Well, I get it done bare minimum, and then it's like, well, there's no color wheels, there's no gobo, there's no color slots, there's no gobo slots, there's no prism slots. I'm like, well, you needed it done in the next 10 minutes. So this is how I was able to get it done in the 10 minutes. If you need it after the 10 minutes, though, like if you need it within the If you have the 2 weeks to wait, we can get you those color slots built in. And they'll probably have images there for your media picker to where you can actually see red, green, blue. We can get those gobo slots put in. We can, if you give us time, we can actually make it a full-fledged fixture library for you.
Correct
No,
profile.
exactly. And then if you give us extra time, you also even have time to check the light that you're using. Not in, and you even have time to check the light that you're using to make, and if there's any changes that need to be made, we can make them. It's not just a one and done type thing.
So another tip for being prepared, have a restore drive.
Yes.
So these come with the console. They used to be red, but now they're blue. I like the blue version more. This installs software to the desk. So if you are not familiar with how to make one of these, you should definitely do it. You can do it on your own at home and test it. But basically, this installs software to a desk. It does take a little bit of time to write and burn these, kind of like how you would burn a CD, essentially. And they're not like a simple drag and drop. You actually have to use software to burn it and make the drive bootable. So if you walk in on show site and your desk is not up to date on software, or maybe it's, for whatever reason, you're not on the right software version, have one of these handy, because it takes time to create one and put one together. I always recommend that you have the current update and then one update prior. So if for whatever reason you found like a groundbreaking bug in the current software version that you're running, you can go back or around onto a different software version. Show files don't always go back, but at least in the last 2 years they've been able to. So that do keep that in mind. So restore stick. Can't even stress that enough. I usually do my current's on blue and the previous is on red, but that's just because I have 2 of these. You can use any flash drive. It doesn't have to be the ones that come with the console, but these are nice because they actually are printed on restore stick.
Yeah.
Another thing I'll say for being prepared is you can create a lot of stuff at home even without a visualizer, even without a fixture present. So what I mean by that is if you have at least a plot or at least a fixture schedule of some sort, you can at least add the fixtures in early. You could at least have them patched roughly. Even if you have to change the patch, it's not that big of a deal, but at least have them in, have them labeled, have them, sort of create your layout that you're going to be using for that show ahead of time. I tell people, you have unlimited time before the show, but once you're on the show site, you're on a time crunch at that point. I always say it's easier to delete something than it is to create it from scratch. So I did a little corporate show a few months ago, and I was told that I was getting LED bars and these wash fixtures, and I had a bunch of spots and all this other stuff, and I had maybe a third of what they said they were going to have, and they cut a lot of fixture types. No big deal. I just deleted what I'd already kind of prepared. It didn't cost me a whole lot of time, and went on with the show. Did a little bit of rearranging, but besides that, I mean, I was golden. So once again, label and color code and create things beforehand. When it comes to positions, if you know you're going to need some sort of a position, just might as well make it, create it, and then add the information in once you get on show site.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Megan, do you want anything else you want to add?
No, I think that's good. Make sure you have that restore stick tip is like valuable in itself. I don't know how many times like emergency after hours calls ends up with hey, restore. I really hate to say this, back up your console, restore the console, and it might fix your issue. Or, oh no, you're running into that bug. Well, it's been fixed on the release version, and you're 5 versions back. Well, I don't have a workaround, unfortunately. The workaround is to update your console at that point.
Yeah.
So making sure your console's up to date, if it can be, is great. I know there are certain cases like you're in the middle of a show run, you're in the middle of a tour, you don't want to update and be stuck. That's why the 2 ISO sticks are the way to go. That way you can back up. So carry 3 sticks on you, 1 for your show files, and then 1 for the current version you're on, and then 1 for 1 back, just in case you need to roll back for any reason. But yeah, and then also just to be safe, always, always, always have a backup. I don't think we actually mentioned this at all inside these tips. So bonus tip number 11.
Yeah, have a backup.
Always have a backup for your console. For your show files. You never know if your console gets stuck in customs if you're doing an international tour. And you have to run on Hog4 PC. You never know if you are, if for some reason your console does go down and you need to rent one locally. Having that backup is super duper valuable so that you can just plug it in and go. Plug it in, adjust
I,
some network settings, and go.
I've heard of someone dropping a gel frame on a console screen and it broke the console screen.
Ah.
And so, if if you have a console
Mhm.
and it, for whatever reason, actual damage, it gets dropped or whatever, I always recommend having Hog4 PC handy just in case.
Right.
You can actually, if the super widget on the console or the widget itself that's built into the console still works, you can actually network into the console with Hog4 PC and actually still output it. So if it's like a screen damage type situation, you could do that.
Hmm.
Um, and the
I mean,
last thing I wanted to say, in this category at least, is learn from your mistakes. Can't even stress it enough. I actually have opened up show files after doing a show, and I actually tell myself what worked and what didn't, and I use that as a mentality going forward. If I spend a lot
hmm
of time on this and I never used it, I can't even. So many times I've built a scene or a cue list or got that perfect effect, and I used it twice. It wasn't really worth my time. So keep that in mind and learn from your mistakes.
yep, yep. I always do that. Um, Also back to that backup thing. Sorry. Um,
No, we're fine.
keep a. I mean, I know they're not cheap, but the ETC Nomad keys with Hog4 PC are an invaluable backup. That little USB dongle, just plug it into your computer and leave it there. Don't lose it. Just because that, if you get the unlocked version, that is 12 universes of control, and that's a lot of universes of control. Your Hog4 PC setup can then back up just a full bore by itself. With ArtNet and SACN, I mean, I'm not trying to say, hey, go buy one and push a product, but it is a nice setup to have as a backup when needed. All right.
Trying to find a page for it, but yeah, that's
Yeah.
all. That's all I got. Those are my 10 tips. And once again, you learn a lot from other people. So don't be afraid to talk to other
Mm-hmm.
programmers. If you don't know any programmers, and there's Facebook groups out there, and you can meet a lot of people. There's lots of different forums out there. Reddit's great for very in-depth problems I found, and a lot of like, how do you tackle this weird situation? Or hey, is this possible to integrate this third-party thing with this third-party thing with my
Mm-hmm.
console? I see that a lot on Reddit. So don't be afraid to ask a question if you don't know how to do it. Cool. Anything else, Megan?
Um,
I think that sums it up for the
I
day.
mean, I think that's good for tips. Like, honestly, like, and also don't be afraid to like email us, even if you're in a situation where you're just trying to see if this thing is going to work. You can email us. We'll say, oh yeah, we've had other people call in and say this works, or we've helped someone get this situation going and it's worked fine. Um, we have, I mean, I've taught hypotheticals before on like a Facebook post. I've taught hypotheticals before on a Reddit post and on emails all the time back and forth, just making sure, just seeing if stuff works. Again, I mean, I might not have personally done it, but I probably know of something that actually happened with Noah recently.
Yeah.
Um,
You
the,
want to talk about
the,
that?
yeah, sure, you can talk about it. That's fine. But
Sure.
where he was like, "How do I do this?" And I was like, "Oh, wait, I think I have documents somewhere because I was talking with someone who has done this thing."
Yeah, Megan saved my butt this week, actually. A friend of mine is in Hawaii, and because of COVID-19 pandemic, can't get any programmers to the island, and all the guys on the island that he knows are basically busy. So he actually, was brainstorming, and we figured out a solution for me from my house here in Austin to actually make a VPN and connect to the TV studio that he was working in on Oahu, essentially. And this was actually last night, and he set up a camera for me, and we set up a VPN and had AnyDesk, which is like a remote control software set up. What was nice is I was actually using my Hoglet my Hoglet here at home to control a rig. And it was actually really nice because I didn't think it was possible until I went to Megan 2 nights ago and
Yeah,
said,
sometime this week.
how can I possibly make this work? You never know. There might be a creative solution out there.
Hmm. Yeah. And again, just shoot us emails and we'll figure out if we have something.
Yeah.
Um, cool. With that being said, next week we're gonna do. So these were 10 tips and tools to be a better hog programmer. next week is going to be 10 mistakes that programmers make that we've seen programmers make.
Common mistakes.
Yeah, and I mean,
Oops.
it's probably going to actually apply to a lot more consoles than just Hog. So if you're kind of like I don't really know Hog that well, but I'm really efficient on EOS, and you're trying to like get the idea back and forth, it'll probably also help you out there. Um, with anything else, Noah, before we tackle
I
some
think I'm done.
big
I
stuff?
think, man, we could probably talk for hours about how to be a better programmer all day long.